My father laughed when I told him I was skipping my sister's graduation party. Why? He asked. Afraid you'll be compared to the smart one again? Everyone laughed except me. For 26 years, I'd been the family's disappointment while my sister collected every trophy, scholarship, and compliment. Then, halfway through her celebration, a man in a navy suit walked straight toward me carrying a sealed envelope. He smiled and quietly said, "Miss Carter, we've been looking for you." When I opened the envelope, the room fell silent. Suddenly, no one was laughing anymore. My name is Olivia Carter. I'm 28 years old, and for as long as I can remember, my family called me the dumb one. Not because I failed school, not because I refused to work hard, simply because I wasn't my older sister, Rachel. Rachel was everything my parents admired. Straight A student, debate champion, Harvard graduate. Every report card of hers was framed. Every achievement became another family story repeated at every holiday dinner. Then there was me. I loved solving problems, building things, and asking questions that didn't have answers in textbooks. Whenever I talked about business ideas or technology, Dad would chuckle. "That's cute, Olivia," he'd say. "Maybe leave the big ideas to your sister." After enough years, I stopped trying to convince anyone. I simply smiled and kept my dreams to myself. Instead of applying to prestigious universities, I enrolled in a local college, worked evenings at a coffee shop, and spent every spare hour learning software development and entrepreneurship online. Two close friends believed in the same dream I did. Together, we started building a tiny software company for my apartment. Our office was an old dining table. Our conference room was a neighborhood coffee shop. Our marketing budget barely covered pizza. Nobody in my family knew. Every time I'd shared an accomplishment growing up, it had somehow become another opportunity to compare me with Rachel. So this time, I chose silence. Over the next 4 years, our little company slowly grew. One customer became 10. 10 became hundreds. Then businesses from other states started contacting us. Life became incredibly busy. Some nights we worked until sunrise chasing deadlines. Some mornings I drove straight from the office to family breakfasts pretending nothing had changed. Meanwhile, my parents proudly prepared for Rachel's graduation celebration. They rented an elegant ballroom, hired photographers, invited more than 100 guests, and reminded everyone that their oldest daughter had made the family proud. 3 days before the party, Dad called. "You're coming Saturday." "I have work." "You can miss one day." "I've got an important meeting." This family comes before meetings. I knew arguing wouldn't change anything. "I'll be there." The ballroom buzzed with laughter when I arrived. Relatives hugged Rachel, congratulated my parents, and admired the expensive decorations. Several people smiled politely at me before asking the familiar question. "So, what are you doing these days?" I answered the same way I always did. "Just working." Most lost interest immediately. Halfway through the evening, Dad stood to toast Rachel. "She's living proof that intelligence and hard work always pay off." Everyone applauded. I smiled politely from the back of the room. Then the ballroom doors quietly opened. A man in a tailored navy suit stepped inside carrying a black leather briefcase. He looked around once before walking directly toward me. He stopped beside my chair, smiled professionally, and said softly, "Miss Carter, we've finally found you." The entire ballroom seemed to freeze. Conversation stopped. Even the band lowered its volume as the man in the navy suit approached my table. He extended his hand with a polite smile. "Miss Olivia Carter?" "Yes." "My name is Daniel Brooks. I'm with Summit Peak Capital." I recognized the name immediately. They were the investment firm that had spent the last 8 months negotiating the acquisition of my company. We had agreed to keep everything confidential until every document was finalized. I hadn't expected them to find me here. "I'm sorry for interrupting your family celebration," Daniel said, just loud enough for everyone nearby to hear. "But the final authorization cleared this afternoon. These documents require your signature." Every eye in the room shifted toward me. Dad frowned. "What documents?" Daniel looked at me. "May I?" I nodded. He opened his briefcase and carefully removed a thick folder along with a large cream-colored envelope. My hands stayed surprisingly steady as I signed the final page. Daniel reviewed it, smiled, and extended his hand again. Congratulations. It's official. The acquisition has been completed. Nobody seemed to understand what he meant. Rachel looked confused. What acquisition? Daniel turned politely toward my family. Miss Carter is one of the founders of Novasync Technologies. Silence. The name meant nothing to my relatives, but it meant everything to me. For years of 18-hour workdays, thousands of rejected proposals, hundreds of software updates, more sleepless nights than I could count. Daniel handed me the cream-colored envelope. Inside is your ceremonial payment confirmation. I opened it slowly. The first page displayed one number in bold letters. $47 million. For a second, I simply stared. Not because I didn't know the amount, because after years of working toward this moment, it still didn't feel real. Daniel smiled warmly. On behalf of Summit Peak Capital, congratulations on building one of the fastest-growing logistics software companies in the country. The room remained completely silent. My father looked from the envelope to me, then back again. Rachel blinked several times. You own a company? I did, I answered softly. We sold it today. One uncle leaned across the table. $47 million? I nodded once. Before taxes and distribution among the founders. Mom slowly sat down. When did all this happen? Over the last 4 years. You never told us. I gave a small smile. I tried sharing my ideas years ago. No one took them seriously. Daniel gathered the remaining papers before speaking one last time. Miss Carter never stopped believing in her vision. It has been an honor working with her. He shook my hand and quietly excused himself. No one spoke for several long seconds. The applause that had filled the ballroom only minutes earlier had completely disappeared. Then Dad looked directly at me. His voice was barely above a whisper. Olivia, why didn't you ever tell your own family? Dad slowly stood from his chair. Without saying another word, he motioned toward the quiet garden outside the ballroom. I followed him. The evening air felt cool after the crowded reception hall. For nearly a minute, neither of us spoke. Finally, he broke the silence. Olivia, his voice sounded different. Smaller. Why didn't you tell us? I looked toward the lights glowing through the ballroom windows. Would you have believed me? He hesitated. I don't know. I do. He lowered his eyes. When I was 16, I told you I wanted to build software. You laughed. When I was 19, I showed you my first business plan. You called it unrealistic. When I said I wanted to start a company instead of chasing the perfect resume, you told me I wasn't smart enough. Each memory landed heavier than the last. I stopped sharing my dreams because every conversation ended the same way. You compared me to Rachel. Dad rubbed the back of his neck. I thought I was pushing you to do better. No. You were teaching me that nothing I achieved would ever be enough. His shoulders sank. I never wanted you to feel that way. I know, but intentions don't erase years of words. For the first time in my life, my father looked genuinely ashamed. I judged intelligence by report cards, he admitted. I thought success had only one path. I smiled gently. There are many paths. Mine just didn't look like Rachel's. A moment later, the ballroom door opened. Rachel quietly stepped outside. She walked over and looked at me with a smile I hadn't seen before. I owe you an apology. You do. I spent years believing I was smarter than you. She laughed softly. Turns out, you were busy building something incredible while I was collecting diplomas. There was never a competition, I replied. I only wanted us both to succeed. She hugged me. It was the first genuine hug we'd shared in years. When we walked back inside, several relatives congratulated me. One uncle asked what I planned to do with the money. I smiled. I'm setting aside part of it to create scholarships and startup grants for students whose ideas are dismissed before anyone gives them a chance. Dad looked at me with pride and regret. I'm proud of you, Olivia. I should have said those words a long time ago. I nodded. Thank you. I've wanted to hear that since I was a little girl. Driving home later that night, the $47 million wasn't what stayed on my mind. Money changes numbers. It doesn't heal old memories overnight. What mattered most was finally understanding something I'd spent years searching for. Real success isn't about proving people wrong. It's about believing in yourself long before anyone else does. Because the loudest applause in life will never matter as much as the quiet confidence you build when you refuse to give up on your own dreams.